Hello again, guys. Let's now. So in the previous video, I talked in theory about objects and what an object is. In this episode, we are going to actually create our first class in C# in Unity. So one more thing I would like to notice here is that this thing is called a class creation. I mean, class declaration. So we are basically creating a class here, and so it is called class. And instance of the class is when we create an object of type student. So, for example, if later on I type something like student, I mean after creating the class, I'm writing something like student s. So what it means is that I'm creating, so S is an instance of class student. That's all. So I have Unity opened, and I have my first script opened. So let's just delete what previously was here. Let us just go up here out of our current class, and let's type. Let's create this class over here. Let's type public class student. Open the brackets, just retype after me. Then let's put grade, number of graduation year. Actually, I'm gonna copy paste it. So we have a variable int number of graduation year is on gap boolean variable. Now we have like a method which returns just true. Let's just type it in here. So, and another so we should bool here, because we will be asking is our student learning, and it will tell us whether it is true or not. I mean whether our student is learning or not. Another thing, we should copy paste and get grade function. Oh, actually I don't like get grade function. We will see later on why, because there are properties in C# and you are to use them instead of getters and setters. So let's let's just create a function which will return a string representation of the student. Okay, and actually the student should have a name. String name. So a string, let's call the method toString. Okay, so it's a system method. It has specific color or not. So now let's just return grade plus grade. Let's just type in here name plus name. Actually, I have a better even idea. We can just make it so that now let's put in here name. Okay, so our method returns string representation. Let's just call this method string representation. Okay, so now we have our student class. And by default these variables are here will be private. So let me show how you create the instance of the class. So you can type like student just as an ordinary data type, but in this case the data type is an class. Okay, so let's create student. Let's call it stud, and here new student. So here we are creating a new instance of class student. Now let me show you what you can do with the student. So since these variables over here are private, so let me tell you about private and public stuff in C#. So in classes, let us just talk about public and private things inside classes. So we'll talk about this public later on. So now if you put public before a method or before an attribute, it means that you can access it. So for example, I can type stud name. It is underlined because I should use the name. That's okay. So so I can access the attributes using dot notation, like here stud.name. For example, I can save this name stud name in some other variable, for example stud name. But things by default in classes are private. That means that I cannot access, for example, grade by dot notation. As you can see, it gives me an error. Even if I put here int, I still cannot access, and it says cannot access private field grade. So typing this is basically the same as typing this. Yeah, but for the sake of simplicity and more readability, you should always remember that if there are no access specifiers, that means that the field of the method is private. So this whole thing down here is private, but the name has a public specifier, and so I can access it through the dot notation. And in most cases, you should avoid using public variables. They all should be closed. And if someone wants to change them, that someone should interact with your class through behavior specified in functions. I mean, in methods of the class, yeah. Because that's logically, you cannot just come to a person, touch him and say, oh, you know, I just changed your name, or I know your name. You cannot do that, yeah, because you should ask name. And we would provide here a method which would be like ask name, yeah, but you cannot just touch a person and know his or her name, okay? So I think so let's just create a, let me demonstrate you one more thing, like public bool is learning, and let's put it on private. So as far as possible, our attributes will always be private, okay? So here we have public is learning, and it returns true. Okay, let's just change it to something like boolean is learning. And even though we will have always our so it doesn't allow me to use the same name for the method and for the function, since it won't be able to distinguish between the attribute and the function. Okay, let's just type in here learning. So, and even though I told you that we are going to use almost always private attributes for the classes, let's just, for the sake of demonstration, I will use here public. And by the way, you can assign class attributes exactly in here. So let's just put in here like false, and this thing is learning will return this value of this boolean variable. Okay, so now if I would like to know bug.log whether or not a student is learning, I would call a method is learning, and the method would tell me. But now, why did I make this variable public? Since I wanted to demonstrate you what it means. So now if I put in learning something like true, or let's just be a little bit more tricky. So I put the opposite. So I'm getting the student learning, and I'm getting the opposite of it and putting it here. So if student learning was false, it will be now true. If it would be true, it would be now false, since I'm negating it. And if you want to know more about Boolean operations, you can watch my previous tutorials. Yeah, guys, they are just awesome. So, and I explained this operator there, but I will remind you once more. So this operator is negating Boolean. So if this Boolean is true, the negating of it will be false. If this Boolean is false, the negating of it will be true. Okay, that's all. So now I put the negative, and I put the opposite value in learning, and I'm calling again this method. So save, go to Unity, wait while it compiles. So now what we should get is learning. This thing over here will call this method, and it will return learning, and by default learning is false. So this will return false, and then after negating we will have true in here, and this should return true. So we should see the output false, true. Let's check it out, guys. So run the game, and as you can see, it returns false, true, just as I guessed. Okay, guys. So that's all for this tutorial. In the next tutorial, I'm going to cover a topic of properties. I'm going to talk about in the next tutorials about constructor in C#, guys. Maybe I will come up with another topic we need to cover before diving in Unity API. But that's all for now. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you later, guys. Bye bye.